private. Not a single fucking soul has seen this video. That video is marked as not advertiser friendly. On private.
Even on private.
The invisible fucking people who have seen this fucking video are apparently they're being harassed by it.
Yeah. So somebody's got it out for us. I'm thinking, I don't know, is YouTube Heroes a thing? Because that's what we suspect, that someone's trying to get essentially.
How about? The channel. I think at this point I'd rather it were YouTube and Hero. I think I'd rather they blew their fucking brains out.
Right. Maybe the greens.
A nice Cobain splatter paint on the greenhouse ceiling.
There you go. So anyway, I guess we'll just go ahead and get into it. If you're cool, do you have? I'm getting a little bit of echo on your end. Are you?
Okay. Yeah, just a sec.
No problem.
All right.
That's good.
Hopefully, it's a little better.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. All right. So I guess I'll just go ahead and get into it. It's just going to be a chit chat, but I'll make it sound kind of demi-professional with a little intro and shit. So again, thanks for taking time to come on. And big fan of your content. I've been watching it for years, like well before when you were still doing it was just like games, music, and movies and shit. Mostly. So okay, so let's go ahead and get started here. I'm going to do a little silent break. He is a YouTuber who specializes in Dennis Miller-style rants on metal, movies, and digital amusement. If those things aren't your speed, he has more recently been dabbling in the criticisms of regressive and corrupt politicians, anti-fascists, and journalists. Welcome to Honey Badger Radio, Razor Fist. Sorry, this will likely kill your channel because you are now fraternizing with filthy MRAs.
Wait. I'm a guest? I thought I was just sitting here in a chair quietly harassing you. Damn it! VidCon, you have lied to me again.
No, you are... Wait, you are sitting there silently, but not because you're talking. So wait. So when you talk, I sit silently, and then I'm harassing you. And that's how we're going to do this. And then when I talk... that's how that works.
Exactly.
That's right. Man existing. It's the latest crime.
Man-existing.
Yeah. So,
let's be real here. To a Fabergé feminist like Sarkeesian, a stiff breeze constitutes environmental assault.
That's correct. Which is
if sitting passively in tacit indifference is tantamount to harassment, I think Margaret Cho has a pretty good case against the audiences for her shitty stand-up for the last 50.
Oh my God, Margaret Cho. That's a blast from the past. Are you still there? Oh,
yeah, I'm right here.
Your sound dropped for a second. Okay, so what got you... How long have you been doing this? It seems like years. How long have you been doing YouTube stuff?
YouTube, since about 2009.
Holy shit.
Yeah, on and off, but yeah.
And what got you interested in doing it? Why did you say, you know what, I want to make content for this corner of the dark internet?
I did not start out on YouTube. It's rather hilarious that I'm kind of associated with it now, but I initially started out, I was doing blogs for, well, I mean, if you want to go back even further, I started out doing political internet radio.
Really?
Years ago, yeah, and then I did a little bit of local political terrestrial radio. Just doing, in the internship thing at the local terrestrial radio station. But anyways, yeah, and then moving forward, I started writing blogs. This'll carbon date my ass. I started writing blogs on MySpace.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, just ranting about minutia of the day, shitty driving stories. They were basically, I was doing a lot of open mic nights at stand-up clubs and so forth. So I was basically just hacking out my act in text form, and it was just entertaining my friends, really, is all it was. And so one day I procured the DVD of a Stallone classic, a cinematic gem by the name of Cobra.
Oh, yeah.
Where, I was reviewing that in text form, And I was kind of like writing it out, and I realized, yeah, this would be a lot better if I just had video to go with this, and because I knew how to edit audio, obviously coming from radio. So I knew a friend who knew how to edit. That was Taryn Gell, who wound up joining me, and we made the first episode of The Rageaholic. And then we uploaded on YouTube weeks later, just incidentally, and YouTube was never my primary preoccupation. I was uploading primarily to like game trailers and a website called Screw Attack. And people seem to dig it over there. Over on YouTube, it was nothing but abject indifference. So I was like, fuck YouTube. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
So that was really how it started. And then it just kind of snowballed. I didn't even intend for it to be a show, really. In fact, I didn't come up with the name of the show. I didn't name my own damn show. My editor did. He was like, we should probably call this something. And I'm trying to be all highfalutin. We'll call it some 9-syllable name that's a quasi-reference to Nietzsche. And he's like, no, we're going to call it The Rageaholic, asshole. That's what you're going to do. And I'm like, all right, whatever. So.
Well, it looks good with the heavy metal font, so maybe better than like a 9-syllable Nietzsche reference would. Although that could look really good.
Well, yeah, it'd be Germanic.
Yeah.
It would give me an excuse to use umlauts. That's all I'm saying.
That's right. So, I didn't know that you started off doing political radio. That actually intrigues me quite a bit because what I noticed was an evolution from what appeared to be videos about essentially pop culture, the movies that you really into, the music, the metal mythos stuff is really good, and also, video games and stuff, which all hilarious things. So, and then what I saw was an evolution, what looked like an evolution into political discourse, which is basically the majority, what I think, or at least half of what you make these days. So if you started off doing that, I was wondering what kind of stuff did you talk about or rant about in the beginning when you were doing internet radio? What was what were the things that you were usually found yourself discussing at the time? Do you remember?
Well, we started doing it very early. We're talking, it was basically a podcast before podcasts existed. Because back in the early days, for internet radio, you had like Lycos, speaking of carbon dating, and Lycos had their own kind of internet radio. That's what we tried to start on. And
is
then
that the one with is that the one with the dog on it? Is that what Lycos is? Is that the dog?
It's been so long, you've forgotten what the logo looks like.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, no, you kind of had Lycos, and then they got shut down, so we were like, well, what are we going to do here? And I just reasoned, well, shit, I've already kind of got some audio editing experience. I have programs for that, so we'll just record it ahead of time, and then we'll put it out as an MP3, and people can download it at their leisure. This was like 2002. Podcasts did not exist. It was a podcast.
Before podcast.
And so we did that every single month. I didn't realize it at the time that's what it was.
That's what it was. Protocast.
Yes. It was a gold wave cast. So we just threw that out there, but primarily the subject matter revolved around, there was a lot of local politics in it. Because at the time here in Arizona, we had just had a very contentious election where a Democrat had won the state of Arizona, a blood red state, without winning the majority of the vote. In some very foul circumstance where like an independent guy came along and split the vote, and then it came out shortly thereafter, he was actually kind of a Democrat plant. There were pictures of him with the woman Napolitano, who, by the way, was recently shit-hammered for embezzlement. There were pictures of this third-party candidate with her at, like, fundraisers for Democrats and so forth, so he basically, like, pretended to be conservative for 5 months so that he could split the ticket and basically usher in a Democrat into the governorship for the first time, and I don't even remember how long it had been before that. So there was a lot to talk about on that front, plus that was the build-up to the Iraq War. So there was a lot of stuff about the Iraq War. I know obnoxious minutia about the Iraq War and its build-up because of doing that show, because we talked about stories that not a lot of people talked about.
You mean the mainstream media didn't talk about?
No, there was, for example, on October 1st, 2003, I don't know why this sticks in my head, about $100 million worth of chemical warheads were actually seized leaving Iraq going into Kuwait. Not quite as much as you would think for like weapons of mass destruction, but it was a story that I remember the Kuwaiti Interior Minister Sheikh Nawaf al-Ahmed al-Sabah at that time. He held a press conference for it, and he invited all the mainstream media outlets to come down. Hey, guys, we found some chemical weapons. You know, WMDs you were saying don't exist. And nobody showed up. I think Fox News showed up. That's it.
So wait, are you telling
but
me...
But they don't count.
Yeah, Fox. So you're telling me that the mainstream media did not report on something that they could have? Like, they didn't do their jobs very well back in 2000 and... I mean, I thought isn't that just something that's just only recently become a problem? I mean, they've been so trustworthy up until now.
There were little stories that we covered that were slightly out of, whatever. So I know minutia about that, but particularly about local politics here in Phoenix, because at that time the local conservative establishment was really eating shit, which really comes into focus now that you see that a lot of them are opposing Trump. It really brings into focus what was actually happening, which is kind of a soft takeover of California, old dog kind of GOP.
And so you got it. That's actually really interesting. Thanks for sharing that. So then you got into the actual Ragerholic channel, and what was it about? Like I guess once you got that going, why did you say, oh, I want to talk about I want to do Metal Mythos, I want to talk about Death Wish, I want to talk about The Shadow. Like, why is it just because I just want to do what I want to do, or did you have like some kind of plan, or is it just kind of like this is what I want to talk about?
Always what I want to do. Always. Look, when you start out and for like the first year and a half you have less than 200 subscribers, you kind of get into a mode of thinking where it's like, this is really for my enjoyment, so I'm just going to do what I want. You watch a lot of those episodes, and now people tell me, oh, that was your best episode. That was your best episode. These are classics. And it's like, you understand, this had like 100 views. Right? For like a year and a half. Like, no one watched these. But, like, up till, like, the Dragon Age Origins review, the first kind of New Year's resolutions episode, those kind of videos, I mean, I had less than 200 subscribers. And I had less than 2,000 till, like, 2011. I mean, it was a very slow thing, and it's been a very slow thing. I'll just have it's kind of a slow growth followed by massive spikes of interest because of one video or another, and I think that's because of the sort of grab bag approach of the subject matter. But what inspired, I guess, to address your query, nothing inspired me. I just started out reviewing 80s action movies, and so it made sense. Hold on a sec.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I am lethally sorry about that if you're still there.
I'm still here.
My house almost caught on fire, that's all.
Oh, all right. Well, I mean, no
there's like a property right next to mine, and, the neighborhood's really good, but, like, around it, it's kind of bad.
Yeah. And
hobos will occasionally wander into the neighborhood randomly, and I guess they, like, lit the lot on fire, trying to, I don't know, smoke crack or whatever, do hobo things, so we had to call a fire department, and, yeah, it was pretty amazing.
Could be Antifa. I mean, sometimes you can't tell the difference between Antifa and a hobo.
We're just trying to spread that diversity.
Yeah.
Just a second. So yeah, sorry about that. I'm glad we weren't live with this.
Yeah. Although that would have been dramatic and exciting for people watching.
It would have. I could have been your man on the scene.
Yeah. You could have been shouting like from the other room and got people riled up. But that's
I need a fake tan and a shitty facelift though first.
We also need to throw in some Howie screams. Is that what the Howie scream? Do you know the Howie scream from movies? Sometimes they call it the Oh shit. Okay, you know about the what's the one they always do with the Star Wars movies? It's like the scream sound effect they put.
The Wilhelm scream.
The Wilhelm, right? Well, then there's the Howie scream, which is like the one from Broken Arrow, where Howie Long falls out of the train, and it's like this. You know the sound I'm talking about?
Right. Fire bats from StarCraft.
Yeah, right.
It is.
They call that. That's the Howie scream. I think some people have another name for it. I love that one. That one always makes me laugh. All right. Well, anyway, where was I? We were talking about your channel and what you do on it. So you did always have an interest in doing politics as a topic, because that's what you started with, at least like the local politics. And it looks like, considering that you memorized that one guy's name with the chemical weapons, whose name I couldn't have just pulled out of my ass, it seems like it's something that, it sticks with you as something that you're passionate about. So what do you think about... God, there's so much to ask about what's currently going on. Do you have any... I've been watching your videos, everything leading up to the Donald Trump election. So what do you think about Trump right now?
I think when you grow up watching politics and actually following it, this is, I think, something that even a lot of recently converted conservatives or mere shitlords fail to take into account is... When you compare what Donald Trump has been able to accomplish, he hasn't yet gotten the wall built. He's being fought tooth and nail on that one. He hasn't yet... Well, actually, he is instituting the immigration ban. That appears to have largely been upheld. But even before that, like back in January when he signed all those executive orders, Donald Trump did more in a week than any president had in my entire lifetime. More than he promised that he would do in a week. Mm-hmm. So largely, I'm placated if he gets the fucking wall built. Like, to me, best president of my lifetime. He could pretty much kill a man at that point, and I'd still be like, right on, sweet. I mean, fuck, if JFK can start the Vietnam War and get his head blown off and be considered one of the greatest presidents ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At a certain point, you got to cut Donald Trump some slack if he's able to actually do everything he says he's going to do, because that's why he was goddamn elected.
Right. I'm usually of the opinion that when a president is running, they make a few promises. If they fulfill at least one of them, that's like. I'm not saying that satisfies me, but I think it's about as much as you can ask for, considering how sort of bipartisan our parties are and how much they fight each other and trying to get shit done. Right.
I think that's the barometer. That's the metric at this point, and that it's sad that that's what the presidency has been reduced to. Mm-hmm. But really, it seems like going back through all the presidents through my lifetime, you can pretty much say, oh, as long as you can say, well, he got those two things done, then you're like, oh, he was a solid president. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That seems to be the way that we measure success now. That didn't used to be the way that it is. Teddy Goddamn Roosevelt would slam 12 cups of coffee before 5 o'clock in the morning. He'd pull stumps out of the White House lawn by hand. Like, he would get a million things done before noon. Mm-hmm. And now, like, Donald Trump signs a bunch of executive orders, pushes to build a wall and whatever, and people are like, oh my God, he's a dictator. Holy shit. And he's so vengeful, too. Like, what the fuck? Teddy Roosevelt lost an entire election out of spite. Like, are you kidding me? Are you people fucking shitting me? No one could be as vindictive as that fucking. He's considered one of the greatest presidents ever.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so I'm largely satisfied. To answer your question, I'm largely satisfied with Trump. Although, it has to be stated, I was not originally on the proverbial Trump train. I didn't originally support him in the primaries because I rightly surmised, and he's pretty much borne this out, that he's more pragmatic. He's not an ideologue, which is probably not what we need right now. Anyways, he's not just a hardcore libertarian guy. He's not Rand Paul. He's not like, here's my principles, and I will live and die by them. He's not that dude. He's willing to adapt his outlook depending on changing data, which I like. I've grown to like that, but for that reason, I didn't originally support him in the primaries.
Yeah, those are all fair. I mean, considering what the alternative was, I don't really see... this is the best outcome we could hope for, so... things weren't
Yeah.
looking all that great otherwise.
Well, I hate that perception that, oh, it's this election, it was just a choice between a turd sandwich and a shit smoothie. And it's like, no, there was really only one turd smoothie on
Yeah,
the field.
I
really
agree.
just the one. I think people need to reevaluate that bullshit.
Well,
You know
no,
what
I agree with you on that. I think that I don't think that Trump was nearly as bad as everybody seemed to want to believe. I don't even think that they believed it. I think they just really wanted to believe it. But you know, it was.
Well, it helps people feel like they're the most morally elevated fuck in the room. Oh,
Yeah.
look at me. I'm not locked in with the political establishment. I'm not locked in with politics. I hate them all. Aren't I morally elevated?
Yeah, I voted green, so
Ugh.
don't judge me. I threw it away basically, but you can't get mad because obviously I'm the most moral. No, I hear that. You know what? It's funny that you should mention, since we're talking about conservatism and liberalism and left and right and all. Honey Badger Radio, we generally have a focus on men's issues. That's basically what we are focused on. However, the politics of the time and things going on in the world, all of that is affected by and affects men, and it's affected by issues facing men, and it also is affected by and affects feminism, which is, I think that there is a case to be made that feminism is a powerful tool politically, extremely powerful, more than people realize. But putting that aside, because we don't usually talk about politics as though we have a stake in the race like that hardcore, because ultimately what MRAs want doesn't seem to fall in line with what the left or the right gives a shit about. That's one thing that we've noticed, is that politically we don't actually have any friends, as it were. So we try to look at things as a way outside of those boxes, but I also like to ask these questions. And one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot is, with regards to the terminology that's used to describe the left and the right, and liberals and conservatives, and Democrats and Republicans, I don't know that these things are all as synonymous as people often make them out to be. And I think that it actually makes it difficult to discuss them in a fair way. So since you seem to have been following politics a lot longer than me, help me out here to see if I'm kind of thinking about this in the right way. One of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of times people are terrified of being considered conservatives because they think, obviously, it's a word or a term that has been demonized, sort of like MRA, which is something that we're accustomed to. But
I think a lot of that is terminology. But continue. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
It's okay. It's okay. So what I was thinking about, especially recently, is this idea that liberals and leftists are not the same. Like they're not the same at all. There might be areas in which there's overlap, but I don't think that liberals and leftists are the same thing. And I also don't think that conservatism and liberalism are necessarily, how do I put this, mutually exclusive. Like a person could be in today, you could say that a person wants to desperately conserve liberalism because it's in danger, especially coming from the regressive authoritarian left. And so I guess what I'm proposing is that, does that make sense to you, or do you think that I'm taking the words too literally and not looking at them in another way?
They're generally not mutually. I mean, you have to understand, what a liberal was in 1876 and what a liberal is in 2017 are completely different. And I think a lot of classical liberalism would actually fall more in line with the conservative platform today. Mm-hmm. In terms of getting the government out of our lives, in terms of shrinking its scope and allowing you to breathe a little bit. So it depends. That's why I've often argued, and I'm not sure if I've ever actually put this in video form, but I've said this for years. I think a huge hurdle for the right in this country, certainly in any English-speaking country, I think entire political arguments are won and lost based on terminology, or are won and lost based on simple English. And when you really come right down to it, you kind of have a situation where Like, conservatives are not conservatives. The word conservative has certain connotations. The word progressive has certain connotations. And the moment the right allowed the left to refer to themselves as progressive, when you look at what the word progressive means, when you look at its root, it means to progress, to move to the next horizon, to look to the next thing, to try something that's never been tried before. That's an inaccurate descriptor for the left. They're employing ancient ideas, old ideas that have been tried, in some cases failed. Socialism is not a new philosophy, folks. That's not progressive at all. That's not progressive at all. Conversely, if you look at the right and look at what at least the most extreme, like, libertarian adherents to conservatism are proposing, you're talking about limited government, limited interference in our lives. Folks, that's the only form of government that's never been tried.
Yeah.
Ever. Anywhere, under any circumstances. So if you really want to get painstakingly technical about it, the right are the true progressives, and the progressives are the true regressives. There's a connotation to conservatism that says, well, they're going backward. There's a regressive connotation to conservatism. If you say the word conservative, there are certain connotations, like, rightly or wrongly, stuffed shirts, tweed sweater vests. You know what I mean? Like, there's a kind of a stuffy quality to it, a backward-looking quality to it. And I think the moment the right allowed them to refer to themselves as progressives and refer to themselves as conservative, I think they kind of lost a certain element of the argument, and they're going to have to overcome that at some point. I think that's one of the reasons the left has pounced so hard on the term alt-right, because they know language wins entire debates before a single word has been said. If you look at global warming, for example, global warming, we don't even call it that anymore. We call it climate change.
Yeah.
That was painstakingly done. People, they had focus groups and shit actually decree, okay, it's going to be climate change from now on because it sounds less alarming than global warming. So If that was actually done, and effectively, might I add, and entire political campaigns thereby, you're telling me the fucking right can't relabel themselves and actually better actually encapsulate what they're in fact about? So that would be my argument on that one.
Yeah.
I think you've got to change the nomenclature, and that's kind of half the battle.
Yeah, it's going to be tough because you got to essentially change everyone's perception of what these words are and what images they summon in people's heads when they hear them. And you're right. The conservative position of small government and all that is never been tried before. And actually, men's rights activist positions are also progressive because they've also never been done before. I mean, wanting to not have your baby's penis get sliced up and wanting to, look at father's custody rights and male suicide and all these issues that have never been done. Whereas feminism's essentially, as it doesn't really exist as the opposite to men's rights activism, but it often stands in opposition. What it stands for is not at all progressive. These are very old ideas. Protect the women. They have to come first. Look out for them. This is something we've been doing.
Like, seriously, if you think about somebody describing the left as progressive, it's like, wait a minute. So progressive, the connotations, we're looking toward the horizon. We're trying something that's never been tried before. We're forward thinking. We're unencumbered by the manacles of the past. Okay, what about authoritarian socialism connotes moving forward? That's never been tried before. For fuck's sake, I'm reading Benito Mussolini's autobiography right now for rant purposes.
Okay.
And this guy seemed to be into authoritarian socialism quite a bit.
Yeah.
In fact, if you read the first half of this book, socialism this, socialism that, it's like he was paid by the socialism in this book.
Well, he called himself the most dangerous man in Italy, and he essentially didn't he take on the title of fascist? Like, he was proud of it and considered himself. No, it was the most feared man.
He considered fascism. I'm in the process of actually cutting a rant on this subject, but he considered fascism to be true socialism. He formed the Fascist Party as a response to what he believed was the watering down of the Italian Socialist Party because of the split that took place in Italy in the early 20th century, where the socialists were gaining so much momentum in Italy because of all, the strife that was happening over there, that they decided, as a placative gesture, they were going to give the Italian socialists a seat in parliament. And Mussolini and several others argued, oh, well, that's a betrayal of the party's principles, because you can't make a socialist system from a capitalist one. You can't effect change from within it. You have to change it first, and then it'll be socialist, and then you can have the utopia you're looking for. So literally, that's where the birth of fascism starts, is from socialists abandoning their socialist principles, basically.
Yeah, yeah. Huh. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing that video. Well, let me ask you another question. It's something else I thought about, and it's something we've talked about this on our channel a few times, where we try to explain to people why, despite my my personal interest in politics, the issues that we at HBR want to address, the things that we're trying to accomplish, they kind of exist outside of what we call the church of women worsting, or the church of it's not so much the church of feminism. It's just, think of feminism as the religion, and the church is like the it's the belief structure. It's like feminism is one religion, like Christianity or Islam or something, and everyone operates within it, even if they're against feminism. They all operate within the church. So even if anti-feminists do, because they say things like, oh, feminism was once needed in the past, or feminism is needed in these other countries in the world, where we make the argument that it was never needed anywhere, and that anything that it's one of these constructed things that takes a statement that a man made once. I think his name was Charles Fourier. He said feminism is judging any nation or culture or society by how it treats its women. That's it. That's all it means. And everyone does it all the time, whether you're on the left or the right. And the only thing that's different is how they operate. The right, often, they say women in this country are the safest than anywhere else in the world. But women in the danger is not the men here. The danger is the men over there in those other countries, in those other places, and they are a danger to their women and ours. And that's effective for, and I mean, this is effective for people to think about, especially if you're conscientious, which people on the right tend to be. People on the left have an even more effective strategy, which is why I think feminism is so much stronger with them, because they say the women who are in the most danger are not the ones in foreign countries. They are the ones right here. This is why we have 1 in 5 rape statistics and 77 cents on the dollar and domestic violence and all of this shit.
We have those statistics because we have a thriving fiction industry.
Yes, for sure. And I mean, all of it is bullshit. But the problem is the narrative is so strong that when you're a person who cannot decide whether women have it worse, especially if you're young and you're learning about this stuff, so you're a young girl and you're going to high school and you're learning about this stuff, of course, there's an 85% chance that whoever teaches you anything about your experiences is going to be someone that's going to be teaching you from the feminist perspective. So they're going to tell you that people who live in the Middle East, the women who are in their burqas and everything, they're actually enjoying more freedom and liberation than you are. And you're the one that's in danger because there are half of the men in this room would rape you if they knew they can get away with it, which is another statistic that gets thrown around, by the way. And it's a really powerful tool, unfortunately. So we try to look at this as, we try to push ourselves out of the box and say, look, all of this is bullshit. I mean, even, and I know this is a really difficult thing, we get a lot of shit for this, but even in countries like Islam, we try to look at the condition for men there before we say this is a specifically a country that is bad for women. We think it's bad for everybody. But the weird thing about it is that when you take a society and then you sort of like upturn the narrative that it's normally just bad for women, and you decide to include men as part of the suffering group. You say, well, women are, they have it bad for sure, but men do too, and here's all the reasons why. For some reason, the problem becomes smaller to people. Like, they think it's less of a problem when it affects twice as many people, which is insane. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. And it's interesting to me, I would just as an addendum to that, I would say it's rather interesting that so many people on the third wave feminist dole, as it were, tend to also subscribe to the gender as a social construct idea. Because when you really break it down, feminism is the most constructed of social constructs. Mm-hmm. If you look back, if you're a student of history in any discernible fashion, you look through and you see powerful women aplenty, Joan of Arc and whoever. You look at Calamity Jane. Mm-hmm. Was that not a liberated woman?
Mary,
she was
Mary Queen of
Scots, business owner and a scout for Custer. You know, it goes on and on and on. But she needed feminism to come along and tell her, codify her concepts, and create something for her to be. No, I think Calamity Jane was herself first.
For sure.
I think that was probably what happened first. That really is at the core of it. Their problem is not the masculine. It's not the right. It's not MRAs. Their problem really at the end of the day is individuality. They need to break people down into the collective, and
the sisterhood.
The construct of feminism is the most effective tool to do that.
Yes. So, what do you think of MRAs? And you can be brutally honest. We get the worst of it all the time.
I've been perfectly amenable to everything that I've heard from the Honey Badgers and from. I'm a big fan of Karen. And all of them, everything I've watched of them, I've enjoyed. So I wouldn't describe myself as some card-carrying MRA by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't find it disagreeable.
Right. Okay. And well, one of the things that I noticed. Let me ask you this before I go to the next bit. Where do you stand? I never asked you what you consider yourself to be politically. Where do you sit on the spectrum? Is it the four boxes, or are you like somewhere else?
Are you kidding me? I'm not just right of center. I'm right of right, motherfucker. Like I'm not, and I've been perfectly upfront about this. Yeah. I used to the first political party I registered for was the Libertarian Party, and then it became the Party of Pot, and I was like, all right, I think I'm off this train. Okay. I think I'm off of it. It just the joke that the Libertarian Party has degenerated into. And mind you, like, my family, like, my mother was one of the earliest volunteers in the nascent Libertarian Party in Arizona, which was, a lot of people don't realize this. The Libertarian Party proper, the party that today we call the Libertarian Party in the States anyways, spun out of the Barry Goldwater presidential campaign in the 60s. So, like, the Libertarian Party kind of spins out of Arizona, in a way. Like, his speechwriter, I guess, lived in Tucson. He was one of the people who founded the Libertarian Party, one of the formative figures in that. And my mother was she was working the phone banks in, like, the 70s. I'm doing this. And she's, like, a teenager at that point. So it's, I have affection for the ideas of the Libertarian Party, but it has fallen well the fuck away from what it was initially founded on.
So you're not really a big fan of you're not a big fan of the Gary Johnson fake heart attack thing when they talked about weed?
I think I could that I do. No, that fuck stick. Glorified goddamn Muppet. But anyway, no, I'm not a fan of what the Libertarian Party has turned into. They do provide a pleasant alternative when I hate both options so much. They give me someone to vote for at a protest. Like, I voted for Bob Barr when McCain was up. I hate McCain so much, and I despised Obama, so I was like, oh, fuck it. I'll throw my vote away for Bob Barr. Who gives a shit?
Yeah, sure. So I guess you still, like, a lot of the stuff the Libertarian Party stood for, you still believe in. It's just some of the I guess some of the dumb shit. Like,
Plymouth Rock landed on me. You know what I mean? Like, it's it kind of. I've often said this. Libertarians are just Republicans with principles. That's all they really are at the end of the day. If Republicans had their shit together, they'd just be libertarians. So, fortunately, Trump has definitely moved the party more in that direction. But he's also pragmatic, so he's authoritarian on certain issues, which I I am too. You know, I'm not 100% full on no borders pot for everyone fucking libertarian. I think there needs to be at least some kind of regulation here and there. We do need to erect some manner of border. So
yeah, I'm with that. I mean, I would say that overall I'm pretty libertarian in my beliefs, but then like the some of the stuff I hear libertarians talking about that they think should happen now because principles, I'm like, dude, the world's not ready for this yet. Hold on, you know, like where you can't just do that when there are whole other countries that only know socialism that are right next door. No. So
no, it's a pleasant guideline, but you have to, if you're just coloring within the lines, you're kind of breaking it. It's not really working on that level. So that would definitely be, I'm right of right. I'm kind of, I'm Goldwater Republican is really what it comes down to. That's basically what it is. I'm a very libertarian Republican.
Yeah. That sounds good. That sounds fair. So the reason why I brought that up is because I had another guest on a while back. He's known for a libertarian, well, almost a narco-capitalist page. That Guy T.
Of course.
You've heard of him?
No,
okay.
I'm a big fan. Actually, my Why We Need the Wall video is basically a reply to his video about why Trump's wall would never work or something. It wasn't. I didn't call him out or anything in it, but it was inspired by it. I didn't want to. You know, I like the guy. I don't want to kick up e-drama with the dude, but he actually encouraged me. He was like, dude, you should make a video about this. So I was like, yep, fuck yeah, it's a good idea. So I made my video about why we need the wall.
Yeah.
So yeah, that essentially, I'm a big fan of That Guy T, though.
Yeah, I am too. No, so I had him on the show, and he actually mentioned something that I find really interesting, and I think it is really true about MRAs, and this is why I was asking you about them, because the thing about feminists is, feminism is essentially socialism with panties. Like they want to have the government replace men in women's lives, and they want women to be dependent on it. So this isn't good for men or women at the end of the day. It's not about liberation. It's not about choice. It's not about freedom. It's not about individualism. It's not about any of that, and which we've already covered.
Well, it's about categorization always with the left. Always. It's about categorization and corralling people into their convenient ethnic and or social and or socio-political phylums, and they're all corralled into their little political pig pens. And rather conveniently, the implication for everyone in every single pig pen is, oh, hey, by the way, vote for Democrats.
Oh yeah, of course.
As long that you notice, that's the only constant. Everything else fluctuates. Yep. Everything else is amorphous. But the one thing that's inviolable is, oh, hey, by the way, you all vote for the same person.
Yeah, exactly. Or they just bring in, like, when they want to bring in people, they want to make sure they bring in people that are more likely to vote Democrat.
Yeah.
So, you know. But what That Guy T brought up something that I had thought about, but I didn't expect that he would actually confirm. See, a lot of times when people are talking about MRAs, they look at them as the mirror of feminism, in which case the belief is that if MRAs ever had the kind of lobbying, political, economic, academic, entertainment, media power that feminism has, it would become feminism for men, which I think is ludicrous only because of things like gynocentrism, and like, there's just no way it's going to happen at that scale. However, even with that taken into account, That Guy T brought up something that I had thought about, which is that's not really the case. MRAs are not the opposite, because MRAs don't want to use the government to do things for them. They actually want to be free from the government. They actually are looking to get out of the super corrupt family court system, look at issues facing male incarceration rates, or at least make the female ones more sort of equal, or address it, like point out that it exists. They want to look at things like circumcision. They want to look at things like all these most of the issues that men are dealing with are actually more of a consequence of the shackles to the state rather than a desire to be free from it, which I think is what MRAs want. They want to be free from the state. So yeah. I think that's actually why a lot of people who get involved with the men's movement have libertarian or right-wing leanings, or at the very least,
because whenever you wind up with an authority of any kind that has to arbitrate on an issue between a feminist and anyone else, I mean, fuck. Hey, at least VidCon. Look at the VidCon situation. This is a rather innocuous example, but you know, the guy at VidCon sure came down decisively on the side of right and justice there, didn't he?
Yeah,
you know, if Hank Green were any farther up Anita's ass, she would have been hawking. You know, she'd be hawking up his hipster glasses, as far as I'm concerned. And that's really what it comes down to. Whenever you have any kind of authoritarian structure and you have an arbiter in some way who has to decree on a matter, you look at it statistically, 9 times out of 10, they're going to go with the chick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are.
Karen did a fantastic video, one of my favorite videos of hers, about Anders Breivik, where she was talking about how in Norway, his father, who is a fairly prominent figure in Norway, there had been a custody battle with him and Anders Breivik's mom. And the father had kept trying to get custody of the son, or at least visitation or something, because the mother was a fucking loon. She was batshit. And, of course, it came out later that she had sexualized her son at an extremely young age, and there was some creepy Oedipus shit going on. And it was just wrong on a lot of levels. So the father had tried to get custody, could not. Not because there wasn't evidence, but because the Norwegian court system, as all socialist utopias do, by default decrees in connection with the mother. That's just kind of the default position. When possible, give custody to the mother. Unless she is literally about to light the building on fire and leave the son in it, we are going to leave the kid with her because it's just better for the kid, we find.
Yep.
So that's kind of... I thought that was one of her best videos, but that's what I'm talking about, really.
Absolutely. So, you've been on the internet a long time. Would you consider yourself to be an old fag?
I'm actually not very old. I started young. That's sort of what happened.
Well, I thought old fag just meant on the internet a long time. I didn't know it actually referred to your actual age. Like, isn't that a 4chan thing?
I guess. Although I didn't even get on the internet thing very quickly when I was initially. I mean, I was amazed in 2000-ish when I finally got a 56K modem. I was like, yes! You dial that number.
Okay, all right. Then, yeah, you weren't... I got on the internet around 2002, and that was the first time and I'm pretty old, but yeah. I'm with that, although I think it was DSL at the time.
Yeah.
Well, no, but okay, so the reason why I asked is because, so what's with the fedora thing? Now, I gotta know because I don't understand it. See, the fedora tipping meme that's going around, I don't know if it applies to male feminists, atheists, or fucking white knights, because it seems like it, or not, no, male feminists, atheists, white knights, or MRAs. It's like all of those things, and I don't know which one it's supposed to be. It feels like that's wrong.
That's the thing about internet pejoratives. They're most convenient when they can be applied to anyone at all.
All right.
Anyone who doesn't like a movie that everyone else likes is automatically wearing a fedora. You know, everyone who doesn't like the popular game of that season is tipping their fedora. You know, it comes right down to that. It's really anything that I don't like. If you're going against the grain in any conceivable way at all, you're bedecked in a fedora. Which is hilarious because fedoras are like they're accepted headwear. Hipsterdom has completely co-opted my entire generation. If anything, it's the fucking normies who are walking around in fedoras. It's the Yahtzees of the world who are decked out in the goddamn fedora.
That's right.
So I don't understand why the fuck that would be considered counterculture in some way.
So wait, now the fedora...
If anything, dressing however the fuck you want and liking whatever shit you want and not liking whatever the fuck you want, you know, should be the antithesis. It should be negative fedora.
Yeah, yeah. So fedora is the small brim, and then the trilby is the big brim? I always thought it was the other way around. I get them confused, too.
Trilby is the small brim?
Yes.
I don't know. I don't wear hats. You know, the most I'll do is wear a fucking bandana occasionally.
Okay, so I just thought I would just throw that out there. What are your thoughts on the G20 riots and protests, depending on who you ask, that have been going on in Germany lately? You know about that, I assume.
Yeah, that's actually what inspired the rant that I'm going to be cutting here about the formation of the fascist party and Mussolini and so forth, because it's shocking how unaware these people are. This is one of the reasons why I had to read this book again. I've read Mussolini's biography, My Rise and Fall, a number of times. Actually, the first time I read it was in like 6th grade or so. Like, I've always found the character fascinating. I've used him for reports and so forth in school, assignments, whatever. If you have to do a biography, whatever.
Why Mussolini and not like Hitler or fucking Hirohito or some shit?
And here's why. Here's why I think he's more important than Hitler, because he founded fascism. Mm-hmm. He's a really important figure because all of the successes and failures of fascism are wrapped up in his biography. Everything about him communicates all of the fallibilities, why fascism can never work, why it's so seductive. That's the most important bit. Why? Because people think, oh, I can identify fascism on sight. Fucking jack boots, goose stepping in the streets. No, motherfucker, look at Hamburg. They're literally marching on a capital. They're literally marching on a city. They're rioting. They're committing a mass string of arsons in black shirts. That is literally how the fucking March on Rome started. That is literally how the fascist party was founded. They went around in major cities and burned their fucking rivals. They committed mass arsons. That's how fascism started. Antifa is fascism. That's what it is. It's not even, that's not hyperbole. That's not, no. It's the definition. Outright. One-to-one comparison, they are the new fascism. Fact. They're even rooted in socialism, just like the original fascism.
While taking photos with their iPhone 7s of the carnage.
They're fascism with selfies, is what they are.
Exactly. Fascism on Twitter.
Yeah. So and it hits home doubly for me because this is the only German city I've ever been to in my life, believe it or not, is that city. So it's like, it hits home. I'm watching streets that I've walked down burn, and remembering how kind the people were and how beautiful the city was and how shitty their food was. But remembering all of those things, and how incredible that experience was, and now I'm watching it burn on the fucking news. Well, I'm not really watching it burn on the news because the news won't cover it.
No.
But on Twitter, I'm watching it burn.
Yeah, it's like the only places that are actually talking about this are the two, well, mainly the two largest independent media sources that we have today. And I don't know if you know which ones they are, but this is what we have. The two largest independent media sources we have on the internet today is fucking InfoWars and the Young Turks. Those are the biggest. Those are the ones outside of the mainstream media and CNN, Fox, and shit. Oh, so wow. just this is what we're working with right now. Jesus. We need better news
Christ.
people.
Pick your poison.
Exactly.
Motherfucker, would you rather have some ambiguous asshole with a gigantic head screaming at you, or the Young Turks?
Wait, what?
Or Alex Jones.
Yeah. So that just I'm looking forward to seeing this video. I think it's going to be epic. I knew you were going to do something on it because I was like, oh, he hasn't done anything in a while. So let me give you a couple of quick and easy questions that are more related to stuff on your channel. These should be fun. So what is your pitch for the Shadow game? I didn't watch the video because it was too long, but I love the Shadow. So I want to hear what you would do if there was going to be one.
Yeah, the idea would be, I think what we finally arrived at, and it was sort of a collaborative video with my fans. We kind of went back and forth talking about different stuff that should be in it. My idea was it would be kind of Deus Ex-ish, in that you would kind of have, it wouldn't be open world, thank God. I think that's been played the fuck out at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be kind of chapter-based, and you would sort of have a hub. So you would basically every single hub would be an individual case. You know, it would be like an issue of the pulps.
Right. Would basically. It be kind of like, and I mean, this is a very loose connection, a little like how L.A. Noire did cases?
Yeah, only L.A. Noire was open world. Take away... No, it's actually very similar to L.A. Noire.
Yeah.
Take away the open world and replace it with hubs.
Yeah.
And so you'd go to a specific hub for this case, and a specific hub for that case, and a specific hub for this one. There'd be like 3 or 4. And each one would be centered around a specific case, and it would all kind of foreshadow. In each area, you would have something that would foreshadow to the sort of final case, and it would all kind of revolve around that. A lot of investigation, but that presents a lot of opportunity for variety. One particular case could be more action-oriented, because I remember back in the day, I actually have a book by Walter Gibson where he was talking about how he conceived of the Shadow stories, and he said that they tended to fall into 3 groups, and I hope I can remember them all, like mystery, action-packed kind of caper, and supervillain story. From what I remember, those were like the 3 sort of prongs of the Shadow's gigantic throbbing shadow dick.
Mm-hmm.
So that was essentially like how he conceived of Shadow stories. So you could have a lot of variety. Like one of them could be kind of a mystery story, one could be more action, one could be, more of a supervillain story, whatever. And then, like, the gameplay itself would be pretty heavily focused around stealth, because if you read, again, the pulps, the Shadow's he's a killing machine. He can kill some bitches. Mm-hmm. He can kill a lot of people. But he's more of a planner and a subverter, and he's more into subterfuge. This is a guy who, in World War I, was like a counterintelligence operative. He was, like, assassinating people, and he was dropped behind enemy lines to do all kinds of wet work and shit in World War I. So he would be more into that kind of thing. So a lot of stealth.
Yeah, he was the inspiration. He was the inspiration for Batman. So like a lot of, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Social. There would also be social stealth. This would be an element kind of exclusive to him. Nothing like Batman Arkham Asylum, where more of a hitman thing, where he would disguise himself, because this is another recurrent element in the Shadow fiction, is that he's a master of disguise.
Mm-hmm.
He can really kind of assume any form. And so you would sort of have disguises that you could wear. You could impersonate someone. You would have to actually investigate them and be paying attention to the game, paying attention to clues, so that you could properly interact with people as that character, or else you would be discovered. And that could be another alternative to just sneaking around conventionally, thief style.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the third kind of prong of gameplay would be outright action. The Shadow can bust some fools when he wants to.
Mm-hmm.
So, you would kind of have your choice. It presents a lot of choice with it, because that's the Shadow at the end of the day. He's either the master of disguise, he's either the master of stealth, or he's the master of just shooting bitches in their fucking ugly domes.
Yeah, so if you're doing a game adaptation of a character from fiction, like something out of a comic book or a pulp or even a novel, the goal would be to capture what it is that makes that character so attractive to people, and also the way the stories are told. So basically, that's what you're tackling with this.
Absolutely, and I would kind of have a art style like the Saboteur, where it was black and white with little splashes of red, little splashes of color here and there.
Yeah, I dig that.
That would be my pitch for the game. I think it would be fucking fantastic.
So, what did you think about the Alec Baldwin? What do you think?
I thought you know what? I think he was good. He was actually damn good. I don't like Alec Baldwin or his politics particularly, but I thought he did a damn good job personally. That movie, I put that as probably the best comic book film of the '90s, which isn't, admittedly, not a terribly high bar to hurdle.
Yeah, but, of the '90s.
Along with The Rocketeer, along with The Phantom.
Yep, I have all 3 of them. I bought all 3 of those because I love my pulp shit. I even got the Flash Gordon from like the 80 or 81 or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, but along with Rocketeer, along with Phantom, maybe Batman Returns, I would say those are the best comic movies of the 90s. And Shadow, I think, is the best of all of them. It's a damn good movie.
Yeah. Blade came out in 1999, though. So I don't know if you like that movie or not, but just saying it's another comic book movie.
Vampire Matrix, you mean?
Yeah, but before the Matrix, though. The Blade
it?
Yeah, the Blade came out before the Matrix did. It was I want to say it was early. It was in the same year, though. And actually,
I'm sorry, I put that incorrectly. Vampire Dark City?
Yeah, Dark City predates Blade, though, and I like Dark City too. For sure. Well, okay, so I just had to ask about that. So,
yeah.
What is it about Death Wish and other 80s movies that you are so attracted to?
The brutal simplicity of it. I think in our modern day, and by the way, I think this kind of brings us back to what we were talking about a second ago. I think this is why people are rediscovering the Shadow and thinking he's a kick-ass character, because there is a cold, brutal, remote simplicity about his morality that is completely binary, in no way ambiguous. The punishment is vicious, but it's fair. And it's over the top and ridiculous as well, so it's innately entertaining as well.
Mm-hmm.
Same deal with fucking Death Wish. Same goddamn deal with Death Wish, where it's like, especially the original Death Wish. If you watch the original Death Wish, they really get into a lot of moral.
They do. I watched it. Like
shockingly prescient and completely relevant today.
Absolutely.
It's hilarious now to think when Death Wish came out, it was not made in response to anything. You watch the original Death Wish and you think, oh, that's New York in the 70s. No, actually, that was a futuristic depiction of New York in the 70s. It wasn't crime-ridden like that then. It was only by the end of the decade, when the crack explosion happened, that it really became what you see in that Death Wish film. So Death Wish actually presaged what actually happened in New York. And then that's why Death Wish 2 happened. People tend to see Death Wish 2 as this exploitative sequel. Personally, I think Death Wish 2 might be the best film in the entire series, because now it was made in the 80s, where the reality that was depicted in Death Wish is now reality. That's what it is now. So they were actually able to respond to what was happening, and they used, tellingly, L.A. as the backdrop to do that. And it's actually a very well-made film. There's actually a lot of little details that you don't notice. Like, there's this brilliant moment in Death Wish 2 where it was kind of making fun of how the criminal justice system is just oblivious. They want to be kind to criminals at the expense of the victims, and kind of the idiocy of the left. And there's this moment where Paul Kersey, at the end of the film, is pretending to be a doctor because one of the killers of his daughter, one of the rapists, the people who raped and killed his daughter, he pled insanity, and now he doesn't have to go to prison.
Right.
So he infiltrates this mental institution as a doctor. He makes up a fake ID, and Paul Kersey is walking in there, and he talks to one of the doctors, like super liberal doctor, and he says, "Now, where's the guy's room at?" And he goes, "Oh, it'll be the first door on your left." And he's like, "Oh, sorry, left." You know,
yeah.
It's like this brilliant little tell that he's got left on the brain. There are all kinds of little subtle details in that movie that you don't notice the first 5 times you watch it. It's actually a very well-made movie. So I think better than the first one. But yeah, those would be the reason why. And then just the fucking balls-out ridiculousness of Death Wish 3 and 4. It spans the gamut from more cerebral fare like Death Wish 1 and Death Wish 5 to increasingly goddamn ridiculous Death Wish 3, where he's got a goddamn rocket launcher. He's got a fucking Browning machine gun. He actually fights a car and wins. I mean, it just... everything great about everything is in those fucking movies.
That is great. And it's actually really interesting, because I I watched some Death Wish movies as a child, but I can't remember them very well. And I didn't get back around to it till relatively recently, and I actually did end up watching the first one because it was on Netflix, and I watched it with my friend. And I'm sitting there watching this, and I'm like, this is really, really interesting because of some other reasons. One is it's a very Second Amendment, like a pro Second Amendment movie, which you don't really see that these days.
And it's made by a British guy.
Yeah,
it's not even. That's the amazing thing. Michael Winner. You should look into Michael Winner sometime. He was a fucking character. He was a different kind of dude. When Death Wish 2 came out, the hardcore feminists hit him hard. And there's actually clips you can watch on YouTube of him debating feminists over Death Wish 2 because they felt the rape scenes were exploitative and everything. And he's just sitting there chomping a cigar and smirking and blowing the smoke right in her face. And he's just like, whatever, bitch, it's entertainment. Like, he was a stud. He was a fucking stud, this guy.
That's funny that you should mention that, too. Because one of the other things that I'm a big fan of 80s movies, and as a kid, I wasn't allowed to go to the movies. My parents, especially my mother, was very protective. But as when I, became free of all that shit, I tried to catch up and everything. So I started watching everything I could get my hands on. And one of the things about the 80s, and probably the 70s, and even some of the 90s, although not a lot, there is a lot of unapologetic, masculine, testosterone-driven filmmaking there, like very unapologetic. And I am a big fan of manly movies. Like I want to see movies that don't give a shit, even if and that don't necessarily have to be masculine in the Arnold Schwarzenegger Commando or Rambo 3 sense or anything like that.
No. But yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Well, they do. But I mean, there's other kinds of, like, Jaws is a manly ass movie too. To me, when the guys are all on the boat and they're talking about the shark and shit. These days, though, you don't see that. Like, I mean, it's very, very few and far between do you see a film that looks like those films did, where there was, you mentioned Cobra in the beginning of the interview, and that's another one of those films that just like summons images of just dudes doing dude shit. Look at Charles Bronson. He is not a pretty man. He is not. He looks like a catfish, but I respect him. Like, he's fucking cool to me, So
he was a badass motherfucker. He was that motherfucker was a tail gunner in World War II.
Really?
With dozens of fucking confirmed kills and all kinds of shit.
Holy shit.
He was a stud, and he only got into acting as a result of the GI Bill. He came back. He had been a fucking coal miner in Pennsylvania. He got back, and he was like, am I going to go mine coal for the rest of my life? No, I'm going to try and make something of myself. So he used the GI Bill to take acting lessons. And then he wound up being on Twilight Zone and a bunch of shit. He wound up being in The Magnificent Seven and a bunch of stuff. And those were huge breaks for him. And boom, he just exploded.
Is he the guy who was in a movie with Toshiro Mifune?
Oh yes, Red Son.
Yeah.
What a great fucking movie.
Another manly motherfucker.
Kind of the forgotten spaghetti western guy.
Yeah, for sure.
Everybody talks about Clint Eastwood, but those Bronson ones are fucking fantastic. And he resisted doing the spaghetti westerns for a long time. He didn't want to. He didn't want to fly over to Europe and do it. He wanted to make movies in America. But his wife, Jill Ireland, she finally convinced him, no, you need to go over there and do one because they love you in Europe. Charles Bronson was big here. He was huge overseas. In Japan, at a certain point, he was so fucking huge. When Red Son came out, they didn't even advertise the movie conventionally. They put up a giant billboard, true story, of nothing but Charles Bronson's face. No movie logo, no opening soon, nothing. Charles Bronson's face, and by God, people found the movie because it broke box office records. It was the #1 movie. I don't know if it's still the #1 movie of all time in Japan, but previously I think Gone with the Wind had been #1. Fucking Red Son beat Gone with the Wind in Japan.
Amazing.
Bronson is fucking huge in Japan and Europe and shit. So he finally did Once Upon a Time in the West as a result because his wife convinced him to.
Yeah. Oh man, that's good stuff. Okay, so another shotgun question. All right. Speaking of films, what is the film that you love that you know everyone else hates? What is your guilty pleasure movie? Even a movie that you actually secretly are like, man, there's so much wrong with this, but I like it anyway.
That is tough. The problem is a lot of the movies that I grew up loving and that were hated by everybody have subsequently become cult movies. So it's hard to say.
I guess
maybe I would have to go with the director's cut of Daredevil.
Oh,
but that's the director's cut.
I do like that movie.
Yeah, the director's cut of Daredevil really isn't bad, though. They cut out a lot of the shitty stuff from the original version, but it's still flawed. It's still pretty busted. I admit it. The goofy they didn't remove that goofy ass fucking playground scene.
No,
they didn't remove the shitty Beast Wars CGI. You know, they didn't change any of that shit. I mean, fuck, half the goddamn time at the end of the movie when he does the Matrix kick and like he kicks Bullseye off of the motorcycle, like I'm half expecting Bullseye to transform into Optimus Primal. The fucking CGI is so goddamn shitty. And then they have the big fight on the massive organ.
Yeah, the humongous cathedral organ. And I'm like,
it's a goddamn... There are terrible moments in this movie, I admit it. But the director's cut of Daredevil, because it's Daredevil and because I actually don't think Ben Affleck did a bad job at all. I think he was a pretty good Daredevil, actually. That might be it. But yeah, a lot of the movies that I grew up loving that everyone hated, like I grew up loving Labyrinth. Everyone hated Labyrinth back then. Everyone loves it now.
Oh, yeah.
But everyone hated Labyrinth then. I grew up renting Return to Oz.
Oh shit, with Farouja Balk?
Oh man, every Friday, man, that remains. I think that's still the best Oz film of all time. It's an incredible movie. The Wiz.
The Wiz, yes.
I love The Wiz. I do. I grew up. I'm obsessed with Wizard of Oz stuff. As you can tell, I have all the books, and I pretty much rented all the movies when I was growing up. And now I own them all. So yeah, probably something along those lines. But yeah, that's the problem. I grew up, once I found Blade Runner. Today Blade Runner is considered one of the best, if not the greatest sci-fi film of all time. Mm-hmm. When I was growing up, it was not. Like, it is impossible to convey the unique, twisted expression of, like, smelling a fart and, you know, your dog walking in on you, jerking off kind of expression that people would get when they asked you what your favorite movie was and you replied with Blade Runner.
Yeah, right.
It's impossible to describe because now, after 2007, when the final cut was put out and now, it's the greatest sci-fi film ever, everybody just kind of accept. And now we're getting into that contrarian space where, hey, this movie's not that good, guys. It's time to reevaluate Blade Runner. You know, like Red Letter Media having their little debate about how shitty Blade Runner is. It's like, congratulations, asshole! You've got a pedestrian opinion from 1993. Like, great. Congrats! I hope that got you some ad revenue, because it's not an original opinion, fuckstick. But yeah, those would probably be it.
Yeah. For me, it's, and I always have to make, if I ask somebody these questions, I have to answer it too, otherwise I don't think it's fair. For me, it's, oh god, this is, I'm so ashamed. Stephen Sommers' Van Helsing. That, I know that it's just, I like that movie. It's a bad movie, though. Like, I know most people don't like it, and I understand why. That's the hardest part. It's like, I get it. I know why, but I still do. And it's, you know what it is.
Why would you, but why, here's the thing. Why would you watch Van Helsing when the Solomon Kane movie, which is genuinely good,
exists?
It is.
And I have both of them. But, I mean, sometimes you just want some cheese. and sometimes you want Solomon Kane. I love Solomon Kane. I want more of shit like that. But you know, when Van Helsing was out, it was the only thing like it. And I actually did like Stephen Sommers' work on The Mummy, even though it is a bit of a camp fest. But it was a fun movie, and he had this.
I got to see the sets on that.
On The Mummy?
Yeah, the original, the new Mummy, whatever.
The 90s one, not the Tom Cruise one.
I went to Universal Studios right around the time they were making the Mummy, and I got to see some of the sets on the tour there, and I also got to see some of the stuff, the preliminary stuff for X-Men too, the original X-Men. So yeah. Anyway.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah. So I liked Stephen Sommers has this thing where he likes to recapture sort of Errol Flynn Hollywood stuff, and I have a big fondness for the old, you know, Captain Blood and Robin Hood and the Three Musketeers and those old with fucking, you know, Rathbone and shit, like those guys were bad motherfuckers, right? And I just love the way they used to make movies like that. And so even though the stuff that Sommers was doing today isn't really on that level, I could tell that he was trying to capture it with the music and the set pieces, and he was so over the top. And so I like Van Helsing, but I know why.
It's a shame because another guy who does that and gets shit on for it is a little guy by the name of George Lucas.
Yeah, right, yeah.
You may have heard of him. And it's like, he is so into movie serials of the 40s and 30s, and he loves that kind of shit. And he it informs it and has informed all of his fucking work. Maybe not THX 1138, but everything else.
Yeah.
You know? And he gets dumped on constantly for it. And it's hilarious because it literally is a case where people are just too dumb or have no frame of reference to really understand. Like, the fucking fridge moment in Indiana Jones, it's goddamn ridiculous. We get this. That's the fucking point. That's what these movies are. They're supposed to be tributes to these ridiculous movie serials where, you know, have you ever watched the Shadow serials from 1940?
No, I don't even know that you could watch those anywhere.
Oh, you should. I think they're all on YouTube. They're fantastic. They're some of the best Shadow stuff, actually, in film. And they star Victor Jory, the guy from Gone with the Wind, speaking of that.
Huh.
Yeah, and they're damn good. They're damn good, and they're really based in the pulps. But one of the most recurrent, ridiculous themes is at the end of every single one, because it's a serial, you have to put him in mortal peril. And is he going to survive? And in the next one, is he actually going to come back?
Right.
And constantly, ceilings will collapse on this guy. Always! Like, the masonry on this shit. Like, what the fuck? But yeah, constantly ceilings are collapsing on the guy. And in one, he's on the back of a truck filled with dynamite and crashes into a building, and the whole thing explodes. And I'm still calling bullshit on that. Like, a year later after watching it, I'm still calling bullshit. It was ridiculous. He should not have survived that. It fucking exploded. But yeah, it's like that. That's where that comes from. That's where George Lucas got the goddamn ridiculous refrigerator thing. It's kind of sad. Like, if George Lucas, I think, did more winks and nods, like, hey guys, this is what this is supposed to be, I think people would be more amenable to it. But they're, you know,
it's either the film tried to take itself too seriously, or the audience takes things too seriously.
Exactly. No, and that's definitely the problem with the prequels. Is I contend the worst problem with the prequels, and they have many problems, but the worst by far is the frame of reference of the audience.
Mm-hmm.
They don't get it at all. They don't understand. They don't understand what these movies are actually supposed to be.
Yeah, say what you want about the prequels, but I will say this. After watching Force Awakens, I find the prequels to be far more creative and are unique and original. And it's
it's funny how much better the prequels look after Rogue One and The Force Awakens, and I suspect the next one as well. Sadly, and I say this as a huge Star Wars fan.
No, I love Star Wars, and I want it to do well, but I'm with you on that. I think that you need someone to take like creative risks, and they're not taking creative risks with these new Star Wars movies. I don't think they're just basically showing you old shit like, oh yeah, remember this space battle? Remember X-Wings?
Yeah.
So, all right. So Guilty pleasures. Oh, you know what? There was something else I was thinking when you were talking about the ridiculousness. The other night, I actually showed my wife for the first. She'd never seen it before. I showed her Clash of the Titans because, as a kid, that was one of my favorite sort of fantasy movies. You know, the old Ray Harryhausen one, not the fucking shit remake from you know whatever. And that is a retarded ass movie. I want to say that right out the gate. I don't know what you think about Clash of the Titans. I still love it, but it's kind of retarded. But I guess that's what I like about it. It's like this guy cannot get a break. You know, like he goes from one thing to what it trucks along so fast too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I got some questions from our patrons. This is what we'll end on. A couple of the patrons had questions for you. They basically helped keep our channel going despite all of the fucking copyright strikes and terms of service bullshit that goes on. So one guy says, ask him what power violence is. I don't know what that is. I think it's a metal reference. Do you know?
No, it's a punk rock thing is what it is.
Okay.
It's a form of punk rock that is like hyper aggressive. It's kind of, when I was growing up, I used to call it thrash punk. I don't think it was. I don't think the term power violence had been codified at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But it's it's power violence is like an ultra fast, ultra screamy, like 20-second songs. Kind of ridiculous, just fast, brutal, a little over the top. There's actually a band, great band, by the name of Charles Bronson. Yeah, the band is called Charles Bronson. And, they play power violence. I think, what is the band I'm trying to think of? Well, I can't remember the name of the band.
Look it up.
There's a lot of fucking bands that fall into this genre. But yeah, it's essentially speed punk, basically, is what it is. Not super hard to explain.
You're right. Super speed punk, 20-second songs. Got it. Someone says, do you have an understandable definition of black metal for those who don't listen to metal?
Yeah, it's basically a darker subgenre. Basically, the emphasis of black metal is on a darker kind of atramentus mood, and generally more satanic subject matter. Actually, you know what? Not even satanic, occult subject matter. Mm-hmm. That is really the prerequisite for black metal. It doesn't necessarily have to be Satanism, but it can be Norse god worship, or what. It can actually be a lot of different things.
Pagan.
I saw a band from South America that did voodoo, like black metal. That was all fucking hoodoo bullshit and what have you. Everybody was dressed up like fucking Papa Shango.
Oh, that's cool.
And that was so. I mean, that's kind of the prerequisite. It tends to be faster. They tend to use what are called blast beats, which is you'll hear them in thrash sometimes. It's just really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll tend to have what are called tremolo-picked guitars, which is just where you kind of do this, and you have really big open chords, and you strum really fast. It's, it's like being in college.
There you go. Someone says, how do you feel about Killswitch Engage's new lead singer?
I haven't heard him. I'm not a big Killswitch Engage guy.
Okay.
So I don't know a fucking thing. I'm sorry, I can't answer that.
The only thing I've heard from them is their cover of Dio's Holy Diver, which is okay.
I've heard that too.
Yeah.
I've heard that too.
That's all I've heard. So that's all I know. Because I love Dio, and I wanted to hear how they did it.
Who doesn't?
There are people, again, ugly motherfucker, but
communists.
Got a lot of pussy. That's what I was gonna say. Got a lot of, like there's a guy in Iron Maiden. He has to be the ugliest man I've ever seen. Gets a lot of pussy, I'm sure. Okay.
It'd have to be Yannick Gears.
Okay, somebody says, ask him how he feels about new bands that are ripping off or are heavily inspired by 70s and 80s metal.
I'm fine with it. I think it brings the music back to its roots a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those bands, at a certain point you have to make your own authorship. At a certain point, and I think the best bands in that genre, like there's a current explosion of, I think it's called New Wave of Traditional Heavy Metal, if I remember correctly. And it's bands like Wolf and Enforcer, and a lot of them are from Sweden.
Mm-hmm.
Heat, a lot of these kind of bands, Eclipse, Bullet. And you can easily compare them to one band or another in a lot of cases. Like, Bullet is AC/DC fucking Accept. That's what it is. They bone down with Accept. There's a great big sweaty Swedish man pile, and congratulations, here's Bullet. But at a certain point, they found their own sound. They kind of mixed that with Judas Priest a little bit. They have interesting kind of hooks and what have you. Wolf is another example. Wolf kind of started out as a straight-up Swedish Iron Maiden clone. They eventually progressed to having more thrash elements, which has gotten a mixed reception. But they've progressed in their own direction. So yeah, like, I don't think it's necessarily a ripoff. Some of the bands are. Like, there's a really shitty band from Canada called Striker that a lot of people like. That I think is absolute dog shit. I had a girlfriend in one of their music videos, actually.
Really?
But yeah, but they're they're fucking awful, and they pretty much just quote 80s metal. Like, if you're just doing that, I don't really see the reason for you to exist.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Because those records still exist, and there's thousands of metal bands to choose from within that genre. You don't really. There's all these one demo bands from 1988. That you could be listening to instead of this shit, you know?
Yeah, right. I totally agreed. Okay, so one more. I am a very big fan of Yngwie Malmsteen and Borislav Mitic. I hope I pronounced that correctly. What are some other bands you might recommend to me that are similar?
I'd recommend Jace Lundberg. There's a guy by the name of Jace Lundberg who's a Swedish guitarist, very Malmsteen influenced, but he's also a little bit more eclectic than Yngwie is. He doesn't just do like power metal type stuff. Mm-hmm. He also has sort of poppier stuff, you know, a little bit industrial on occasion, really varied, but a great guitarist. And he has one of Yngwie's former singers, Göran Edman, as his singer. They're really good. I would say... what's the band that his Stradivarius? Stradivarius would be another one that I would recommend. Stradivarius, I believe, has the same keyboardist from a lot of the classic Yngwie Malmsteen records. And that keyboard player is actually, you know, don't dismiss that, keyboard player in metal. No, he was like one of the kind of core creative team in the original Yngwie Malmsteen records. So a lot of that sound is him.
Hey, Rush has a keyboard player.
Yeah, well, a lot of bands have a keyboard player. It's not like they're completely out of place.
No.
But for power metal, I would argue they're somewhat necessary.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just because we were talking about names and shit, what's the most badass band name you ever heard that's real?
There was a great band. There's a great band who I remember back in the day. I had a band that they friended. They friended me on MySpace.
Oh shit!
And the name of the band is Big Fucking Snake. That's just, you can't improve on that.
No, you can't.
It cannot be improved on. Big Fucking Snake. I mean, come on.
No, you can't.
You have reached optimal badassery, my friend. Fever pitch.
Peak band name.
Yes.
All right. Last thing, and then we'll wrap it up. A couple more things. One, what's your favorite video game all time? You'll always go back and play it, no matter how old it is. And is it Super Mario RPG?
For you, it's Super Mario RPG?
No. I was asking if it was Super Mario RPG for you.
No, that is one of them, but I would say Thief 2: The Metal Age.
Thief 2.
I did a whole video about this, but yeah, that, in my opinion, not only is that my favorite game, I think that's the greatest video game ever made, personally. It's a goddamn masterpiece. There's, video games still have not caught up to that particular game in terms of how it simulates light and shadow, in terms of how sound travels, the way that storytelling is revealed. Like, games today are trying and failing miserably to imitate various aspects of that game, even now, and that is now a 17-year-old game, which is pretty fucking incredible. It is going to be 20 years old shortly here, and still has not been matched in the stealth genre. It's hilarious, you know. At the time, like, they got it so right in 2000. They got it pretty right in 1998 with the first game, with the Dark Project. Mm-hmm. But Thief 2 took all of that, focused on just the aspects that were working really well, which is like the stealth and the massive fucking levels with just metric fuckloads of detail. Mm-hmm. And all that. That's the big thing that you get from playing it. Even though the graphics are really rudimentary by today's standards, they were really rudimentary by 2000 standards even. The game engine has not aged well at all. You put some texture packs on it, still, even if you had the original graphics, they made it feel, they simulated the experience of actually being in a place that you're not supposed to be. Like, that's really the experience that they hammer home there. You constantly have the perception that you are somewhere you're not supposed to be. Someone could walk in at any minute and catch you. You really feel like a thief in those games. So I would definitely say Thief 2.
That sounds like awesome. That sounds like something I'd like to play. I never really got into the PC gaming thing too much because I never had a really good PC. So
I was lucky enough to get a decent gaming PC right as that game came out.
I would expect that by now I could probably run it on this one.
Maybe. Yeah, like 99 or so I got a decent gaming PC by 1999 standards. And so I didn't miss out. I remember I got System Shock 2 right around that time, and Omicron, the Nomad Soul, and Thief 2, the Metal Age, and Half-Life, and Deus Ex, and that was all in a span of like 2 years. And it all came out, and I think Diablo 2 came out thereabouts somewhere.
Yeah.
And it was just one fucking smash hit after another. There has not been a creative explosion in the video game industry like that span from 1997 to 2001 on PC alone. Ever since. I mean, it really has kind of been a plateau, at least, if not going downhill since then.
Yeah. Well, then my next question might be a little bit difficult to answer, which is the last one. Is there a game you're looking forward to this year?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a BattleTech is going to be coming out this year. The BattleTech PC game. And I am so fucking excited for it. At some point, the final version of Ghost of a Tale is going to be coming out. Mm-hmm. And Underworld Ascendant is going to be coming out. That's the spiritual successor to Ultima Underworld that is made by the original Looking Glass Studios development team who worked on Ultima Underworld, who worked on System Shock 1, who worked on all the Thief games. Actually, they worked on System Shock 2 as well. And just an incredible video game studio who knocked out classic after classic after classic, and basically they're back. They're called Other Side Entertainment now, and they're making this incredible game. It's already, they gave like a pre-alpha build to their backers within fucking months, within weeks, frankly, of announcing the project and meeting their goal on Kickstarter. And it's already, you can see the genius in it already. It's not perfect, it's still janky as fuck. And I think in retrospect it was a bad idea to give people that early of a build because people misinterpreted it as the game is going to be shit. But if you're into game design and you understand what's actually going on under the hood, you understand this game's going to be a goddamn masterpiece. It looks really fucking cool. Yeah. So yeah, Underworld Ascendant, BattleTech, those would be the two big ones.
All right. And while we were talking about developers, if you hypothetically, if you could pitch your shadow game idea to a development team that you could trust to make it well, who would you have make it?
Ooh, that's tough, man. I would say, that's tough. That's really tough. Because the problem is the way video game development works now. I don't see it getting greenlit. It would cost so much to make it and to market it. They would wind up having to water it down and lobotomize it. Look, not that Not that the idea that I described is not mass market. I think it is. You have the shooting, you have the stealth. Those are two things that actually sell. And they're in a lot of games. They're in Skyrim. They're in, a lot of these games that have sold really well. They're in GTA, right?
Yeah. What was that?
I don't
What's
see
that
why
one? Dishonored or whatever. I think that has a lot of that too, doesn't it?
Yeah, but Dishonored kind of bombed. The second one did, anyways. But yeah, I would say it has mass market appeal. But the problem is, it doesn't have like a bankable license. The Shadow hasn't had a video game ever. They tried to make one in the mid-'90s. They basically finished it. It was a beat-em-up, and it's a really good one, too. And a ROM of it leaked years later, onto emulators. But that's the only Shadow game that has ever existed ever in any context. So it's not like you'd be building off this blockbuster license. There hasn't been a movie since 1994, you know, so you'd be doing some rebuilding work, basically.
Yeah.
Now, how that's any different from Rocksteady's Arkham games? Because Batman did not have the best reputation in video games before Arkham Asylum. He did have good video games before that, but he didn't have a very good reputation in video games because there was a lot of shit that they slapped the Batman logo onto in the 90s and early 2000s. So, you'd have to do some rebuilding work. But if I were to give it to a company, I would say maybe like Team Bondi. They made L.A. Noire, and they're currently making a kind of spiritual sequel called Horror of the Orient.
Oh, the guys, is it the same team that was led by that slave driver that was working at the Rockstar for L.A. Noire? Wasn't he like just working the shit out of everybody and like just making it crazy for them? I remember reading about it in an IGN article. So who knows how true that is? But
it sure fucking was. But they're currently working on a game called Horror of the Orient. But they have the sensibility that I could see that working. They could absolutely make that work.
I think they could. I was thinking that, or like maybe the guys that worked on Thief that you were talking about, or even CD Projekt Red. I think that although I haven't played any of the Witcher games, I know that people love them, and I'm excited for their Cyberpunk one that will, I don't know, hopefully come out before I die of testicular cancer. But so we'll see what they have to do with that, because I'm a big Cyberpunk fan. So, well, anyway, Razorfist, thank you so much for coming on. I want to just say that, and thanks for taking the time to come on our show. It was a real pleasure to talk to you. I like to nerd out about this shit. I could go on and on about 80s movies and music and shit like that.
Speaking of your recent ailment, I still say you should file litigation against WWE for naming Sunday's pay-per-view Great Balls of Fire. That is exclusionary squelch shaming.
That's right. What that is. It is. I think I'm going to name them.
And I was very sorry to hear that you'd been involuntarily subjected to the same surgical procedure that Onision actually volunteered for. So.
Oh, not only did I get that, but I didn't, unbeknownst to me, while I was sitting there in the hospital room, laying there waiting to find out, learning about my testicular cancer while I was still carrying the offending passenger, the three guys come in and they're like, "We are the urologists," and one of them sneaks around behind me and then checks my prostate. Just out of the blue. Like, didn't know, hello, my name is, no nothing, no introductions. He was like, "I'm going to check your prostate now." And,
are you sure this was a doctor's office and not a pride parade in the East Village?
Well, the area I live in is pretty close to Boys Town, but I'm going to go ahead on faith and say that those three handsome young men were in fact doctors. But who knows? I mean, Charles Bronson gets in, so I don't see why these guys couldn't have done it if they did. Well, anyway, thank you. Thanks, Razor, for coming on the show, and we will hopefully see you again soon. I don't know if you know, but I think Sargon is doing a stream to try to raise money later this week, or at least they're talking about doing it. So maybe, if you want to, I can ask him to get you on. I'd chill out with these guys for a bit or something. I don't know. Maybe you'll be busy, but just so you know, it's an open invitation. I'll just put it that way.
Fuck yeah!
All right, cool. Well, thanks again for coming on and joining us on this fireside chat.